Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are back for the new FPL season and we have some major changes that we are going to take a look at and try and explain so you know exactly what will be changing for this season in FPL. We've got about 3 or 4 major changes. There is a few other things that we're not going to cover today, but it is just very minor things. So we're going to take a look at the major things, but first of all, I am happy to announce that for this season I will be partnering with Fantasy Football Hub. As you know, if you have been watching my videos in previous seasons, Fantasy Football Hub, the website, is a huge part of the content that I do make. I used it for pretty much all of my FPL videos and that's where I got all of my stats from. So, you know, I'm buzzing to be able to now be partnered with them and be able to share more content on their website. So if you are looking for more stats as opposed to the stuff that I do show in the videos, then make sure to use the link in my description to sign up. You will get 50% off right now as a limited time deal, so make sure you get in there quickly. And it is so worth it. Obviously, as a non-partner last season, I ended up buying it and it was fantastic for me, and I definitely think it helps a lot with planning in FPL as well. They do also have a money back guarantee if you don't win your mini league, so you are totally safe if you do not improve as an FPL player. So as I said, make sure to sign up with the link in the description and get 50% off. So starting us off for this season, we have our first major change, which is going to be the addition of defensive contributions, which means, again, if you essentially play UCL Fantasy, it is basically what ball recoveries is, but they do not stack. So as you can see, players will now score points when they complete 10 defensive contributions for their team. Now, a defensive contribution will count for actions such as blocks, tackles, interceptions, and clearances. So, you know, it basically adds a new incentive to picking, you know, centre backs, defensive midfielders, and stuff like that. Now, that will count for the defenders, but if you do want to pick a midfielder or forward, ball recoveries will also count as a defensive contribution. So it does kind of give midfielders and forwards, you know, an even playing field against the defenders, who are obviously going to, you know, pick up a lot more clearances and stuff like that, playing at the back. So ball recoveries will only count for midfielders and forwards, and of course your defenders will only get the blocks, tackles, interceptions, and clearances. Now I think that's going to be absolutely huge. Unfortunately, it is only capped at 2 per match for defensive contribution, so you can only get a maximum of an extra 2 points per game, but I think that is going to make a really nice change and I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. Now obviously for defenders it's going to be 10 defensive contributions will get you 2 points, but for midfielders and forwards they are going to have to get 12. I do think this is going to be a lot more beneficial for the defenders, mainly like centre backs and stuff like that, especially now that we've seen the pricing and no defender is more than £6 million, which is no increase from last year, and we are getting more points from it. So I think players like Gabriel and Saliba, who already were very popular players in FPL, are now given this extra avenue to points with a potential extra 2 points per match. They are just going to be a lot better, and you are going to get a lot more value out of them at 6 million as well. Now in terms of the players who are going to benefit most from this is the list of the top 7 players from last season, how many extra points they would have got if this addition was part of last season's games. You're looking at the likes of James Tarkowski, who would have gained an extra 44 points on top of his total last season. Moises Caicedo in at midfield, 42 points, so that kind of shows you how a defensive midfielder can benefit from this as well. We've got Jan Bednarek and Dean Hodgson, who obviously are no longer in the game, one being relegated and one being transferred, given 40 and 38, and then you've got Murillo, Elliot Anderson and João Gomez. So what you are noticing from this is a lot of the weaker teams, obviously not Caicedo, he seems to be the outlier in there, but a lot of the weaker teams are obviously going to be picking up more ball recoveries because they are going to have less of the ball. But when we look at the extra points compared to the best defenders from last year, you can kind of see where that does line up. Now I've got the top 7 defenders in terms of points last year on the left, and that doesn't include the points they would have got from defensive contributions, but On the right, obviously, you can see how many extra points the likes of James Tarkowski would have got. So you're talking like 33% more points, an extra 44 on top of his 105 points last season, is really giving him, you know, additional reasons to pick him up. 5.5 million he is this year as well, so a big price increase for him, but it does put him alongside the likes of, you know, your top scoring defenders last year. And something to keep in mind as well, I think Vardiol only picked up 10 points from he would have picked up 10 points from defensive contributions last year, which means he's only 14 points ahead of someone like James Tarkowski. So it kind of shows you where defensive contributions can come into the game and really make a big difference. With those, you know, teams maybe that won't keep as many clean sheets, there is still a bit of an incentive to try pick them and hope that you can get 2 points per match out of those guys. Now, next season, we're also getting more chips, which I'm very, very excited about, because I think the chips is one of the best parts about FPL. And I do think it can get a little bit stale, considering so many people, at least engaged managers, do save the majority of their chips for the end of the season. So now we are going to be given 2 of every single chip in FPL this year. 1 to be used in the first half of the season from game week 1 to 19, and then you'll get a reset of the chips and get them all given back to you from game week 20 to 38. So this just gives you a much better, I think it makes planning so much more fun, and it makes the start of the season a lot more fun as well, because the first half of the season you really only saw people using the wild card and, you know, just waiting to use the bench boost, the free hit and the triple captain later on when there's going to be, you know, blank game weeks and double game weeks. So the fact that we've now got 4 chips to use in the first half of the season is going to make things very interesting. I'm already seeing a lot of bench boost game week 1 teams, which is something I am going to consider myself, because I was very tempted to do it last season as well. I did use the triple captain last year in game week 2, and then the wild card very early as well. So this year I will be very much looking forward to making some drafts for the bench boost in game week 1, and of course we will have some drafts and some videos in future as well. So another thing to note is you will not see the assistant manager in there. The assistant manager chip is not going to be a part of this season, which I do think is a great change. Personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of it last year, considering how overpowered it was and how it never really made, you know, there wasn't really much of a, like, it didn't really feel like an FPL chip, because it wasn't really anything to do with your players. So if there was anything getting added, you know, a limitless, obviously, that we've seen in UCL Fantasy, where it's basically a free hit with unlimited budget, would have been where I would have went. But the fact that we're keeping it just to the 4 classic chips, I think is definitely a good idea. Now, one change that is being made that I think is an absolutely horrendous change is the transfers for AFCON. Now, pretty much FPL is helping all of the casuals with this change, and essentially what's happening is in game week 16, to help with AFCON, you know, players going away for the tournament, everyone is going to be jumped up to the maximum amount of transfers, which of course is 5. Now for me, I think that just takes away the planning aspect of FPL. Every season we plan around AFCON, and that is a big part of, you know, the game in itself. So I think just giving people 5 transfers in game week 16 to work with that is just kind of taking away the point of the game. So essentially, whether you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 transfers, you're just going to be bumped up to the maximum. So what you want to be doing is, you know, having 0 transfers at this point. You don't want to be wasting any transfers. If you get 2 or 3 banked in game week 15, just get them used. And then you can get, you know, just automatically given 5 free transfers in game week 16. So there is a few strategies that you can go for here. I've got one available here in game week 13. You could look at potentially wildcarding with 3 free transfers in the bank. If you then rolled in game week 14, you can go into game week 15 and use all 5 of your free transfers, and then you would get given 5 free transfers back in game week 16. So essentially you can get like a full wild card over like 2 weeks. You know, game week 15 and 16 you can have 10 transfers to use, and it kind of allows that wild card to be used for 1 or 2 matches, and then, you know, 5 transfers to be used in game week 15. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes to teams in and around this period of the game, and I think it's just going to be a lot of transfers and a lot of template teams with that, with you know, people having so many transfers to use. Obviously a nice one for the casuals. If you don't really like planning, this is going to be a nice change for you. But as someone who played Sky Fantasy Football and, you know, you really had to plan weeks in advance, I don't really like the idea of this, but I'm sure it keeps a lot of people happy, and I'm sure the retention for the game will probably improve on that. And then finally, not so much a change to the game, but a change to the players. We've got a lot of position changes. We've got 8 on screen here, which I do think are going to be the most important. Bowen is now going to be a striker, which I does think reduce his appeal quite a bit, because I think Füllkrug will come back into the West Ham team and Bowen will move back out wide, so I don't think that's going to be too much of a good move for him. Marmoush as a midfielder is someone that I'm very interested in. Again, if Haaland picks up an injury, Marmoush probably moves to striker, and we could have the Manchester City number 9 as a midfielder in the game, so someone who I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on. Gakpo now a midfielder, which is where he really should be anyway, since he does play out wide for Liverpool. Cunha as a midfielder, gonna have to wait and see what happens with Manchester United before if I decide if that's a good, you know, player to go for or not. You know, he's obviously up there with Mbeumo. That's going to be your 2 wide players for Man United, but obviously they've got no European football or anything this year, so Man U could be pretty decent in the league. So again, another one I will be keeping my eyes on. Lewis Skelly now a defender, the same with Nunez from Man City and Arsenal. And Ndiaye, who is on the penalties for Everton, is now a midfielder, so he's another one that I'll be keeping my eye on if Everton do come across a really nice run of fixtures. Then Sessegnon, obviously we got that nice run with him towards the end of last season where he was playing as a right winger. He was listed as a defender. He is now rightfully listed as a midfielder. So that's your main position changes that you are going to want to look at this season. And that is going to be it for today's video, so if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe as well. We will have our first draft video out very, very soon, so make sure you turn on notifications so you know exactly when that does come out. Very excited to start making FPL videos for this year. Hopefully you are as well. Let me know down in the comments some players that you've picked out that you do think are going to be fantastic for this year, and I'll see you all in the next one.